using LLM-backed chatbot, they can get the information they need from outside the company, and it saves them from having to like search through. I mean, yeah, we could have a public-facing knowledge base, right, to find information, which is great. But sometimes people don't want that. They're stuck down to, I need, instant access to information. And it's great to just jump on and chat with something. They could give you those answers. So using Python, accessing that data, working with the data, creating dashboards, just by talking to those AI agents, we're able to develop solutions to work with that data and get insights out of it. And so there's a lot of times, that's what we're looking at is we have all this data. How do we work with it? For us, it's creating some sort of dashboard or, data process flow that brings the important information to the front and presents it to the user, so that they can use it in their job. So what I see changing, I've seen it, I use it myself, is I have a way that I'm really good at writing documentation that makes sense to me. Somebody else in my department or another department, they have their way that they like to write, things that they see as important. And maybe their format, is different from mine. What we've started noticing is that you can use an LLM, take your documentation, push it through the AI tool and have it clean it up and standardize it, right? So that, it doesn't matter whether I write it or somebody else in my department or another department writes it, and ensures standardization. But then even you can take it a step further. I'm very technical, but do I want to create documentation that only a technical person can understand? AI allows you to rewrite that and put it in a format that's easy for other people to understand. And I don't have to have this skill set to rewrite it. I can just have AI rewrite it for me, which comes in, fairly handy. So I see that as being important.
Welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast, where 𝐭𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐞𝐚𝐤𝐬 of Document 360 finds the best SaaS self-service knowledge bases in the world and then interviews their creators. Let's get started with today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. Today we have the pleasure of hosting Chris Clinard, Manager of Emerging Technologies, Samet Corporation. Welcome, Chris. How are you doing today?
Hi, I'm doing well, thank you.
Great. So let's dive right in. Over the next 20 minutes, we'll be exploring your journey, insights into AI and its role in sales and customer success, and some actionable advice for our listeners today. Hope it's fine with you, Chris.
Sounds good.
Great. So let's start with your journey. Help us a little bit more about yourself and how did you find your way into sales in the tech space?
So I've been in IT for about 20 years now. Ran a managed service providing company myself, so did a lot of consulting. Worked for another managed service provider for a while as well. And so through those years, I was able to touch a lot of industries, anything from legal to finance, healthcare, car racing, manufacturing, industrial. So touching all those different industries gave me pretty much the experience I have now. And working with those people, you come to figure out, they need a solution. Sometimes it's a people solution, sometimes it's a technology solution. But it's really working with the individuals face to face and figure out, what they need to accomplish their task. And so taking all that experience, Samet saw the value of my experience and brought me on board here to continue my journey, finding new ways to change their workflows and using technology, maybe just changing the process flow with the people.
Brilliant. So when I met you first time, I was very curious to know what emerging technologies for Samet Corporation means. So would you be able to help us understand a little bit about your role specifically, if that's okay?
Absolutely. So in the construction industry, we're a general contractor. Construction is notoriously behind when it comes to technology. They've been slow to adopt. So a lot of the industry has started seeing, hey, we have all this technology available, whether it could be camera technology to track the job site, and using AI to combine that with like a 3D model. So you can track, how far you are along in the real world with visual with the actual 3D model of what you're building. So that's, one aspect there. There's a lot of data and a lot of systems to kind of track the construction job. So we have all that data. what tools are available now that, companies are making, or what tools can we make ourselves to get actionable insights on that data. But not just that, proactive insights, right? If we see things happening on the job based on the data that's at hand, can we notify the superintendent or the project manager ahead of time, right? And not be in sort of a reactionary type standpoint. So technology, as far as our company goes, sometimes, like I said, is visual. We're using companies to track visual data. We're using a lot of BI dashboards now that we developed internally to track, accounting, finance, billing, stuff like that. We're using technology across the board for, file access. We've gone from a traditional file server to a cloud-based system. And building into that system, we're creating AI-assisted search so that they can search across the entire file system for particular documents and information. And then as far as our knowledge base goes, we've switched from like a file-based, Word and PDF documents in SharePoint to a platform that allows us to ask a question and get an answer against all of the data available. So it comes in handy when you have so much that a particular role does internally. And you hire somebody from outside the company. And so Samet has a certain way they would like to conduct business, but that person may not know. So this really cuts down on the amount of training that we have to do. We still do our training, but users have instant access to, how do I do this particular process in my job role? Well, here's how you do it. And the information is instantly available. So it saves a lot of time. It saves a lot of interruptions to other people's days and the back and forth that goes on.
Brilliant. So since you spoke about AI a few times already, just curious to know how is AI making its waves across the industries, right? So from your perspective, how is AI impacting sales process and also the customer relationship management?
So one of the ways that, we're looking at it is you deal with a lot of subcontractors, owners, partners. Maybe you want more to work with, right? So the typical process is somebody may call somebody up at the company, or there may be an email sent. Hey, I wanted to start doing business with you. I want to start working on some of your jobs because you're a GC. One of the ways I've been looking at it is, what sort of front-facing AI chatbot could you have available for those people to get information about your company to start working with you, right? So instead of, doing the email, a chatbot has access to, what does it take to be a subcontractor for our company? What is the standard process? Just by talking to that chatbot, they could then get those answers, which, could give them what they need or get them in contact with the person they, really should be speaking with, right? So it's allowing us to kind of step back and not have to have that initial person there, freeing them up, and using LLM-backed chatbot, they can get the information they need from, outside the company. And it saves them from having to like search through. I mean, yeah, we could have a public facing knowledge base, right, to find information, which is great. But sometimes people don't want that. They're stuck down to, I need, instant access to information. And it's great to just jump on and chat with something, they could give you those answers.
Yeah.
So that's one way we're looking at, working with outside parties. As far as, looking at potential clients and customers, we have quite a few systems that manage that for us. So we have a large data set there, right? Of former clients, potential clients, things they're looking for. How do you go through that, right? So we have a lot of business development managers. They're really good at maintaining and creating those relationships. There's a lot of data to look through. Maybe you're missing something. So we're looking at, what can we do with that data from an analytics standpoint that could help us? And one of the things we do a lot of times that I've been doing myself is we have an analytics developer and he's really good at what he does, but we don't have a full-on, development team. We don't have programmers on staff. So what we've been doing is using agents we've created that do programming for us, right? So using Python, accessing that data, working with the data, creating dashboards. Just by talking to those AI agents, we're able to develop solutions to work with that data and get insights out of it, And so there's a lot of times, that's what we're looking at is we have all this data. How do we work with it? For us, it's creating some sort of dashboard or data process flow that brings the important information to the front and presents it to the user, so that they can use it in their job.
Understand. Since you mentioned that you've been in the tech space for over 20 years, I thought of asking this to you, Chris. What are the key factors for any SaaS businesses or any businesses for that matters should be considered when creating documentation? You did speak a little bit about your current knowledge base helping you and the team to get access to the information much quicker. So how do you see AI transforming the way someone approaches documentation and the knowledge management as a whole?
So what I see changing, I've seen it, I use it myself, is I have a way that I'm really good at writing documentation that makes sense to me. Somebody else in my department or another department, they have their way that they like to write, things that they see as important. And maybe their format, is different from mine. What we've started noticing is that you can use an LLM, take your documentation, push it through the AI tool and have it clean it up and standardize it, right? So that, it doesn't matter whether I write it or somebody else in my department or another department writes it, and ensures standardization. But then even you can take it a step further. I'm very technical, but do I want to create documentation that only a technical person can understand? AI allows you to rewrite that and put it in a format that's easy for other people to understand. And I don't have to have this skill set to rewrite it. I can just have AI rewrite it for me, which comes in, fairly handy. So I see that as being important. As far as the SaaS solution goes, in creating that documentation, it does need to be written in a way that anybody can access it, right? But also, it needs to be context aware, right? Because if you have an AI chatbot running against it and trying to answer a question for an end user, maybe there's context to that article that's needed for the AI to be able to pull that document, but it's not really context that the end user needs, right? So you could maintain context separate from the actual data. And it's similar to what we do when we look at, pushing database data through an AI to look at, you always have to remember there's context, right? So you can have really good data, but if there's no context, the AI can't do anything with it. So the same thing applies to knowledge bases. You can have a really great article, but if the context to the article is missing, then the AI tool is not going to be able to provide the answer to the end user.
Right. Now again, just a follow-up question on my previous one is, how do you think technology can help or overcome some of the biggest challenges businesses are meeting or are facing now?
Yeah, that seems like a loaded question. A lot of people think you can just throw technology at it. And it's easy to do that. The salespeople call up and they say, hey, we have this AI that can do A, B, and C, and you seem to be sold on it. But I think really for the longest, it's the sales and the companies coming to you saying, this is what you need, right? And I think people are looking at it wrong, right? When they look at technology, I think they should look at their processes, look at what their end users are doing on a daily basis, down to the fine grained detail, what does their role look like on each day? What do they do on each day? What is their process? How do they interact with other people in the company? How do they interact with people outside the company? And really define what that process looks like in the detail. Because if you have that as a company, then you can sit here and say, well, these items looks like something maybe we could automate. We could automate this flow right here. Or this part of the process could be assisted with an AI tool, right? So if you know your company and your processes down to that level, then you can go back to these companies who keep saying, hey, look at our AI, and say, no, actually, this is what we want out of a solution, right? What can you provide us that's going to help meet our goals, right? And flip it around on the company, because a lot of companies try to tell you what you need and you may not know, right? And you get down the road and developing with this company and you realize this technology is not going to work for us because that's not our flow. That's not how we work, right? So don't change your flow to work for the company. Understand your flow, and then you can do a better job at reaching out and figuring out how these technologies can change. But as far as like how technology is going to change, I think a lot of stuff's going to be automated. The big keyword this year is AI agents. I think a lot of people are throwing that around. So you have like LLMs you can talk to, and they're getting really smart. Basically, an AI agent is a program that ties into an LLM or maybe a neural network or some other AI style, backend solution. And it's programmed to do a process for you, right? So some of the most advanced ones we've been playing with, they can research things on the internet, right? They can program on their own. They can assist in programming. You kind of look over your code as you're programming. AI agents are really going to change, how we work during the day. A lot of our busy work could go away, right?
Yeah.
So I think technology, is going to be AI focused of some sort. I think AI is just invading every single industry. But I think, people definitely need to kind of put on the brakes and slow down and, don't just go after the new shiny thing, understand your processes, and then go out and start looking at these technologies and be like, is this going to solve my problem, right?
Yeah.
Instead of sitting there and having the company come to you saying, hey, we're going to solve this problem for you. And you're like, well, that sounds good. That's not really my problem though, right?
Yeah, true. That's what when you start something new, you first do a few iterations manually before you think about automating it, right?
Right. And so like, anybody that's in development or programming or, technical writing, they always like break the problem down, right? What am I trying to document? What am I trying to, understand? And I think a lot of people in business that are in the roles that are talking to these companies, they might not have that same mindset, So I think it's an opportunity for developers and people of that mindset to get with those that are making the decision and say, hey, let's break this down, right? Let's break down this process. Let's break down this problem, right? In a way that we understand from a technical side, you understand from the business side, right? And then maybe we can then approach a company to come up with a solution for us, or we'll discover a company that does have a solution.
Brilliant. So, if you had to describe the aim of a knowledge base in one word, what would that be?
Based on my experience,
Yeah.
incomplete. Incomplete would be described. So I come from IT, right? And so documentation is always incomplete. It's always needed to be updated. So most knowledge bases I've ever touched or come across, they're missing key information, right? And it's either because, it's not updated often enough, there's no checks and balances to ensure items are reviewed, or it's the company doesn't want to provide that documentation because they would rather talk to you than you figure out the solution on their own, right? So there's, lacking knowledge bases where they want you to initiate that, back and forth with their support. Or it's just, totally lacking. It's just not there. But incomplete would be my description of a knowledge base. I've seen some good ones,
Yeah.
but in my experience, there's always missing or lacking information, right? So I think companies could, look for that feedback from a user, get that feedback. Is something missing? Is there something wrong with the process and its documentation that doesn't make sense? And use that to then circle back and make better documentation. And I think a lot of, knowledge-based platforms, they lack that, right? There's no feedback loop. Me developing creates a knowledge base, gives it to the customer. And then we have all these calls, on customer support saying, hey, I can't figure this out. Well, if we had better documentation, a way for them to let us know, then, we close that loop and it ensures that we have a constantly evolving knowledge base.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're making it for somebody to read, right? So if you're not getting their feedback, it kind of defeats the purpose.
Yeah, a very different answer, Chris, to be really honest. Any tips or documentation related resources when it comes to AI that you can help with?
So I'm just going to name drop here. The tool I like using most is Claude from Anthropic. It's very good. It's very friendly. It's very good at technical writing. And so we use it personally to kind of help kind of flesh out the framework of something, maybe rewrite certain sections. We use that really well. As far as other tools, something like, Floik can sit there and do a screen record and create your documentation on the fly. I know a lot of people use Screencast-O-Matic or Clipchamp or Windows Game Bar to do your screen recording. Then they got to like do all this editing on the back end, right? And a tool like Floik, or something like that, not only records it, it does mouse movements and clicks and goes ahead and writes using AI what exactly you're doing.
Yeah.
If I'm somebody who's creating a lot of tutorials, how-tos, that's going to save me a lot of time. And then, I'd rather use a tool like that rather than do it the old way of taking screenshots and, screen recordings and having to put in all that filler information myself.
Nice. Thank you. That's appreciated. Now, my last question to you is, what's that one piece of industry advice you would give to your 20-year-old self?
No, I don't know. Keep learning. Keep learning. Like, take every moment you have to learn something new. It took me a while. Like, I was learning things as I needed them, right? Based on the job role at the time or the problem I was trying to solve. I think what I would tell myself is take that extra time to find something you're interested in and learn about it. Because that's where I've really, gained ground over the last few years, is taking those interests within my field and taking the time to learn them, even though it's not related to what I'm working on. Take some extra time to learn something else and kind of flesh out and fill out, the knowledge that you have.
Nice. Thank you. Now, we spoke a lot about AI, but there must be more that you would like to add in this episode. If I missed anything to ask in particular, please feel free to add, Chris.
Take any sort of salesperson you come across that says they have AI on their platform with a huge grain of salt. Just based on our experience, we talk with companies every single week, pushing their product and what it can do. Get somebody technical in the room that understands AI, get somebody on your team that knows AI, that can ask those hard questions. Because a lot of companies don't want to admit they don't really have an AI platform. They're just plugging into ChatGPT or Claude or, Gemini on the back end to make their platform a little bit better. So they don't really have their own AI that's making them stand out, right? Mm-hmm. Do the due diligence and research to find the technical side of how they're claiming their platform has AI, right? Find out, the details behind it. And sometimes, that can work out all right. There's some companies that do just plug into another platform and it's great. It brings value. But, look at the details of what it's bringing and don't get caught up in the flashy, this is AI. I think a lot of people do that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Find out the technical stuff, do your due diligence. Look into the company too. We've noticed a lot of companies spinning up over the last, 3 or 4 years. They're still in startup phase. They're in like Series A funding, right? So do you want to move your entire corporation over to an AI platform that just came out? And, where's that company go in the next few years?
Risk yourself. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
We've looked at a few companies that are touting their AI and suddenly they've been bought up by Autodesk, right? Or some other big company and they just disappear. So, find established companies that have been working on the problem for a long time and have the data to back that up.
Yeah, thank you so much. And once again, appreciate your time and very insightful insights on AI particularly. So yeah, if there's nothing else you would like to add in this episode, we really wish you all the very best for the future project, and interesting to see how technology is being utilized in an industry like construction.
Excellent. Thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you, Chris. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Knowledge Base Ninjas podcast. Please head to iTunes, rate, and provide honest feedback on the podcast. See you next week.